Have you ever wondered what God's perspective on time is? Have you struggled with saying, I don't have enough time to do what God has called you to do? Or maybe you're saying, God's called me to write a book in a short amount of time, and I literally don't know how it's going to happen. If you've asked yourself these questions, then you're at the right place at the right time, because today's guest of Althea TV, Marnie, is going to tell us and show us and teach us God's perspective of time, and you are going to be blessed. Marnie, welcome to Althea TV.
Oh, thanks for having me here. So fun to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here. Let us know, would you share with us, please, who you are, who you help, and how you're changing the world through your business and brand?
Well, that's a big ask right there, but can I start with my most fun job description?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my most fun job description is that I am the personal assistant to the King of the Universe, and I sit with him in private consultation each morning, and he gives me my instructions for the day. And then I go all day running his errands, and he provides all the resources, and the pay is great, but the retirement plan's absolutely out of this world.
You guys, I told you we're in for a treat. Marnie is the assistant of the King of all kings, Lord of all lords. She hears from him, and she's doing his work right now. I love that description. I think a few of us are going to want to borrow or adapt our own.
Yeah. You know, there is one of my famous sayings is there is time to do everything God wants us to do. There's not time to do everything. There's not time to do everything good. There's not time to do everything everybody else thinks we should do. There's not even time to do everything we think we should do. But because God is God, there must be time to do everything he wants us to do. And so that's just a huge passion of my life. And I have a whole bunch of other trainings over at Marnie.com where I have a mentorship program. And I love sharing godly perspectives with women like you who are out there just hitting it hard for Jesus. And there are ways, there are strategies and perspectives that can help.
So good. Marnie, when did God first reveal to you that you understood that there's time for everything to do what God called you to do? Like, where were you in your life? How did you get to knowing this and helping others with this?
I can remember a specific moment. So I've always been like a big time manager person. Okay. My mom was real organized, taught me to be real organized. And she would always teach us that the reason you want to be so organized is so that you can be so flexible in the moment. So instead of saying, I want to get organized so I can be a dictator, you're saying, I want to get really organized so that I can have as much flexibility in the moment. So the more organized I was, I realized, the less last minute stress I was facing and the more I could be present in the moment. But I was doing it from, even though I knew Christ, I accepted Jesus when I was just a little girl. Jesus was in my life, but I was doing it mostly on my own. We have Jesus in us, but then we put him in certain sections of our lives. Like, you can help me here. You can help me here. Don't touch that one, like that. So mostly my time management was all about Marnie. And I remember the day that he got my attention. Seriously, I had gotten all three of our kids and the crock pot of the creamy wild rice soup and the Bible study thing together. And I was pulling into the church parking lot as the clock turned to the second to the minute that I was supposed to be there. And I said, God, you're good. And I wasn't talking to God. And at that moment, my van tire hit a pothole and dumped that whole crock pot of creamy wild rice soup all over the floor of my van. And it was in that moment that I just had this like awakening moment to realize, whoa, okay, wait a second. I can be all together with my time and still be displeasing my dad.
Wow.
And it's when it changed for me, Althea. I just was like, no, I totally want to do time God's way. In 1997, God was asking me to do something that I didn't have time to do. It would take about 10 hours a week. and I did not have time to do it. And so I kept, whenever it would come to my mind, I would just think, yeah, well, nice idea. I just don't have time. And so I would just like push it off. You know what you do, I mean, we can only do so much, right? And he already had my platters all full. And so as this kept coming back to my heart, I kept just putting it off. And finally, I'm like, seriously, God, what do you want me to take off the platter then? Because I can't do anymore. I'm already to the max. I'm maxed out. And he's like, nope, you're keeping everything that you've got and you're adding this. And I'm like, there is no way.
Oh,
Well, I got to a moment of just like, okay, desperation. God was just pressuring me kind of to do this. I always say he's present, he's powerful, and he's very persuasive. And I was feeling this pressure. I had to say yes, but I just couldn't see how. And so I said, well, apparently God time is of no consequence to you. So I'm going to put away my watch. I'm going to put away all the clocks in my house. I am going to trust you to order my time from this moment forward. And either you do or you don't, but that's the only way I can see how I can add this to my life. And that is what I did. So all the clocks went away except for the one on the microwave for Dave, and his alarm clock got to stay in our room. Otherwise, everything was gone. And I just had to listen. I
mm.
had to learn to listen down to like the second, the minute. And it was the most traumatic because at first I didn't know how to listen at that level. Like I would think God was calling me to get up, and I'd get up and get showered and get dressed, sit in my prayer chair. And after a while, I'd be like, well, it's still dark and nobody's moving. I wonder what time it really is. And so I'd walk into the kitchen and look at the microwave, and it'd be 2:12 a.m. or something. And I'd be like, well, I guess that wasn't you. And so I had to really learn to listen. And it took about 6 weeks of this intense, deep end of the pool training for
Mm.
me to understand how to listen and hear God's voice when it came to my time. But what I had to learn in the middle of all of that was that God is intricately involved with every moment of our lives. And he wants us to do what he's calling us to do, not what we thought we should or could or maybe would do today.
So good. I can hear the trauma in the experience, but I can also hear just the joy and the
Yeah,
peace and the intimacy that
right.
came afterwards.
Oh, Althea, I have to tell you, sometimes he would just say, come away with me, darling. That's how he would wake me out of sleep. One time I was so exhausted because now I'm up all night and up all day too, trying to learn this. And I had been awful. I was so exhausted. I went to lay down in my bed. I was just crashed. I laid down. I didn't even take my, anything. I just laid on my bed and I was sleeping soundly and I heard get up. And I'm like, get up, I can't. And it felt like there was a ton brick on my chest. You know how that
Mm.
feels, just so exhausted. And I was like, I can't. And then I just went right back to sleep. Get up. And I heard it again. And I thought, I want to, but I can't. And then I heard it again, get up now. And so I just reached over the bed, and I had taken my tennis shoes off. I reached over bed. I reached on the floor, got one tennis shoe, put my leg up in the air, put my tennis shoe on, grabbed the other tennis shoe the same way. I hadn't got my eyes open yet, but I was putting my tennis shoes on. I sat up groggily in bed. I was still so exhausted. I sat up groggily in bed. I went into the bathroom. I washed my face. As I'm coming out, I look out my front door, and there's an elderly couple coming up the sidewalk to my house. I
Mm.
was like, oh God, thanks for waking me up before they rang the doorbell. I was so out. And then they came in, and then what they wanted me to do is they wanted me to play. I sing and I play the piano a little bit, and they wanted me to play the piano for them for special music for a pastor's dinner that they were going to sing at. But oh, we don't have any music. You'll just have to make up the music. And I was like, God, thank you for waking me up in time that I had a brain that was functioning for this moment. And what I came to learn was that he is so good at talking to us. We're just not so good at listening.
That is so true. He's always talking. So if we don't hear him, it's about us attuning our
Yes.
ears
Uh-huh.
to hear him.
Yeah.
It's not that he's not talking, it's about us and us attuning our ear. What a
Yeah.
phenomenal life-changing experience. So for though, I mean, I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing, that understanding that God owns time, he's above time, that he'll make time for everything
Yeah.
that he's called us to do. And it does require for us to let go and surrender and to hear his voice and be obedient. What are some, for someone who is desires that, right? But is not there yet. Maybe they have just experienced a level of success with exhaustion of managing their time so well. Like they are the productivity queen or king, right?
Right.
Um, speak to that person about
Yeah.
time and God's perspective on time.
Right. So it really changed my world to understand that I can do things. And I'm basing this out of 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, before it goes into all those amazing things about agape love, about God's love. It talks about what's a waste. And it says, I can just do all kinds of things and give my money to the poor and give my body to be burned and all that. But if I don't have this God's love flowing through me doing it, it's just as good as it is. So like if I go feed the poor, they are fed. Awesome. Done. But if I go with God's power flowing through me to go feed the poor, they are fed and there is an eternal value added to it. So it's the difference between working for the here and now and working for the here and now and eternity. And when I understood that, and God taught me this when I was changing diapers, our kids, I had been a big, award-winning sales manager and all that. And then I came home full time to take care of one child. And it was just culture shock. I mean, I was like, whoa, I don't know what I'm supposed to think about and what I'm supposed to do. And one day I was just changing the diapers and I was saying, is this really it? Is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And God's like, if you will do this with me, there is an eternal reward in it. And I was like, for changing a diaper? And he's like, yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. It
absolutely.
doesn't matter what we're doing. If you give a cup of water to a stranger, you have given it to Jesus. If you're doing it with him, and I like to say with him, in him, to him, through him, if he's doing it through you, then whatever we do has eternal reward. So now that is, maybe clear as mud, whatever, we've said this now out loud. Now we recognize that God is outside of time and space. He took John to the end of the world. John already saw it, told us what it looked like. So therefore, God has been there. He has seen all the days of our lives before, the number of our days before we were ever born. He knew how long we would spend here on planet Earth. So none of this is, he's not down in here with us in our time locked strategy. And so when we say, I don't have enough time, what we're really literally saying is, I don't have enough time because God has plenty of time. God has so much time, and that time is available to us. So there were two situations where God literally stopped the clock for me that I know for sure he did, and more that I believe that he warped time for me to be able to accomplish tasks that he was giving me to do.
So good. I can hear in the spirit all the notes that are being taken. I can hear, and it's okay, you guys, you can double tap that YouTube and like go rewind it because of what Marnie just said, of what she just said. I absolutely love it. Now, I know you've given us the foundation.
Yeah.
And I know you also have tips, time management tips specifically for us as business owners from God's perspective. And you've shared some already, but would you share, I guess, your top 4?
Sure. I'm going to share the 4 that come to mind. How about that?
Okay, perfect. That sounds great.
Good. All right. So one of them is to always start with the end in mind, based on the verse that talks about there's a man who will start to build something, but he didn't, count the cost first, and then he can't finish it. And so the Bible talks a lot about planning, about making a plan, setting a vision. We see the rebuilding of the wall, and there's a process that's going to be in place, and you got to have your sword in one hand and your hammer in the other, And so when you are starting any kind kind of a new venture, a new project, whatever, to sit down and actually have the end in mind and then work backwards.
Yes.
So that you can budget enough time, enough money, enough resources, all of that. So that's huge. One of them is to time block. So that was the first one, is to start with the end in mind. Second one is time blocking. And this is where you actually say, I'm going to carve out a section of time on my calendar for something that I would normally have just tucked in somewhere, but somehow that's never getting done, right? Yeah. So, for example, right now I am in my office, and on my front door, on my back door, and on my office door are red signs that say, and these are so worn out, it says urgent, no noise, please, live interview in progress. And so this is stopping the UPS man, the neighbor, my husband. This is stopping everybody from interrupting this very important time period right now when we're live on air. Okay. So you can do the same kind of a thing for different projects. You can block it off. So what I do is every week, anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, I just pray about it in advance and say, this is where I'm blocking off for my retreat with God. And I do a mini retreat with God. I actually leave my home office. I go somewhere else. I usually go somewhere beautiful, and I just sit with God and my journal. I do not take electronics. I take my phone, but I turn it off, and I just sit there with God in my journal for 1 to 3 hours. And he talks to me about what is happening in my life, in my family, in my ministry, in my business. All of this is his. But if I do not block time for that, it's not going to happen. I block time to write. So I've written 14 books. That cannot happen unless you block long periods of time to do that. And when those are blocked, that just takes over. Anybody else that wants a meeting with me has to schedule it before or after. It just is a time block. Give yourself permission to do that.
Really, really good. Just a few months ago, and it's done all the time. I was invited to be a cast member for my Pilates teacher, Andrea Rogers, as she was filming a new Pilates program, and it was blocked out. In a matter of 7 days, we filmed a 3-week program. So what Marnie, and I know many of us have used it, but I love that Marnie is even getting into the nuances that we tend to forget, like the sign, put the sign everywhere. So you're not only blocking the time for yourself, but you're blocking the time for others. And the importance of her retreat, going somewhere else, somewhere beautiful, that is important, that she blocks in to be with God. And so I love this, because sometimes and I'll speak for me, sometimes we block it, but we don't hold it as sacred, or we don't also put enough boundaries so that others will know it. And this is what gets done. This is how my Pilates teacher, who has millions and millions of students, is able to film a 3-week program in a matter of, I think we did it in like 7 days. This time blocking, really, really, really good. And especially the retreat with God, that intentional time.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, number 3. Number 3 is to actually fit as much in to your workspace as you can. Not your physical workspace, but into your work time. So what I like to think about is that there's 2 things that I want to share with you on this one. First of all, if I got a phone call that a loved one, maybe a cousin or someone, passed away, and I'm going to need to leave on 2 days from now in the afternoon, and I will be gone because it's a big trip, and so I'll be gone for maybe 4 days. So if I need to do that, what happens is, all of a sudden, what happens to my productivity? Ooh, just goes way, way up, right? Because when you have a really big deadline and you weren't expecting it, you find that you can get everything tucked right in there. Anything you can't personally do yourself, you're forced to what's the D word here? You're forced to give it to
Delegate.
somebody else. That's what I'm looking for. And you know what, you guys, if you're a solopreneur, or if you are a communicator, maybe an author or a speaker, it's hard for us to delegate, but you have got to delegate. And when you are forced into it, you find there are things that really naturally lend themselves to delegation and things that do not. So put your thinking cap on, just do it as an exercise and say, this week, I don't have a Friday. This coming week, no Friday for me. I have to fit everything into 4 days. Sometime take it down to 3 days, take it down to 2 days and see what happens. I mean, you will find that you can get so much more efficient and effective if you just force it. Get yourself used to thinking a little different about time. And one of the things, Althea, you and I had talked about before was God asked me to write a whole book in a short period of time.
Yes.
And I mean, it came out as just doing great. And it's a great book, but it was so intense because I did not have time. It was like, I did not have time to do this. And about that time, God showed me a system, and I wish I could remember the guy whose book it was in, and I can't. I read so many, I listen to them on audio, usually at double speed. And so I just am absorbing all the time, and I just lost it. I cannot figure out who this was. But what he did is he would fit 3 work days into every single day. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? How could you do that? But what he taught in that structure was that in the morning, when you sit down, you are so efficient and you're so effective. If you are, and if you're not, don't do this. But if you are effective and efficient in the morning, especially, what makes that happen is a morning routine. You have a morning routine that takes place and kicks you into high efficiency. You come off of your time with God, or you come off of, like for me, an elliptical run, or you come off of whatever it is. You come off of that and you're energized and ready for the day. He said, just do a mini morning routine 3 times during the day. Once in the morning, once about noon, and once in mid-afternoon. And you will find that you are 3 times more efficient than you normally are. That really worked for me. And I was able to get this book done in such a short period of time and launch it right on the time that God had put in my heart.
Well, I'm excited because I've heard you share it before, and
Yeah.
it is like, what is she talking about? Like, how do you pack it in? But having heard this a second time, so those of you who heard it for the first time, you're like, what is she talking about? Listen to this again.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is actually very inviting and very exciting, because I know I love my morning routine, my time with God, my movement. So it's like, wow, I get to do mini ones 2 more times. Like, let's go.
And what's interesting is I thought maybe I would just do that for the rest of my life then, that cool, I can get 3 times as much work done. And the thing is that no, you actually are not supposed to, push yourself so hard
For so
all
long.
day, every day. And I always say there's 2 kinds of seasons. There's new baby season, and then there's real life season, And so if you have a new business, it's kind of like a new baby. And if somebody says to you, gosh, you're just not getting enough sleep, if they say that to a new mom, she's like, yeah, well, what do you want me to do about it? I mean, it's just season. Like, I got it. So this baby needs me
That's
in the
good.
middle of the
That's
night.
good.
It's just where you are right now. But if this season goes on perpetually forever, now you've got adrenaline fatigue going to come in here, and you're going to physically suffer for that. So you want to make sure that you're walking with God in these intense seasons. New business, new book, whatever it is, there's seasons that are going to be very intense, and you just have to let God really maximize your minutes.
That's really good. And I'm actually using it for the book. So thanks for that reminder.
Yeah.
Like, it's intentionality when to do
Right.
it. And the theme that I'm hearing, which I love, because we always saying, it's like you said, I don't have time for this. And again, Marnie recognizes, that often we say we don't have time, but God has time for it, right? And these are the ways in which she's done it. Okay, this is so good. And it's such a perfect time, because we're right in the end of November, and during this time we begin to think about the next year and new ways of how we want to show up. And again, this is an invitation to really go deeper with God,
Yeah.
because you're going to be looking at time and using your time the way that he designed it.
Right.
So
Yeah, love it, love it, love it. Okay, number 4, real quick. Number 4 is one step at a time. And what I like to say about steps is that you really literally can only take one step at a time. We weren't really built with, octopus legs. We only take one at a time. But sometimes the step is just a regular step. Sometimes the step is a quantum leap. Sometimes the step is to sit still in your car in the traffic jam, seeming to make no progress forward. But as long as you just sit there, pretty soon you'll move again. So sometimes the step is just waiting. But what I want to encourage you is not to get all overwhelmed with all the things you could do, should do, somebody else says you ought to do, all the things you want to do. Just ask Jesus, what's the next step for me? And it's not that we don't plan ahead, we do. But then we just say, okay, in this plan now, what's the next step? I mean, just earlier today, I was like, okay, God, I have so many things I could be doing right now. And I just sat down, literally, I wrote down, Daddy, I have options. What do you want me to do? And into my mind came the 5 things that I could do next. And I got them all done before you and I met here. So when we walk it out with him, he's like the master time manager. He did the 400 years things. Abraham, your family's going to be in captivity for 400 years. And then along is going to come Moses and get him free. And it's silence before Jesus, 400 years. And he's right down to which fish is going to be near the shore that has a coin in his mouth. He's right down to the detail stuff. So just trust him that he knows how to do time management, and he can help you with yours.
Last question, I believe. What's the one thing that stops people from embracing what God's shared with you about time and that they need? Like, what's the one thing that tends to stop people from embracing God's perspective on time?
Well, I want to say faith, because that's critical, but can I say it in a different way?
Absolutely.
So I like to say, I would be more faithful if it didn't feel so irresponsible. So what I mean by that is that when I'm walking with God and I'm saying, yes, I'll do that project that I simply have no money, no time, no energy, or no interest in doing. But God says, this is the next thing you're going to do. And when I say yes to that, it feels so irresponsible. Like, why am I saying yes to this? I should say no to this. It's not even, maybe in this situation, it's not even in my strength sweet spot. It's in my weakness. Why would I say yes to this? But the thing I know for sure is when we say yes to God, he is going to flow through us and do it for us, through us, for his glory. And he's even made stronger in our weaknesses. So I would be more faithful if it didn't feel so irresponsible. And I think irresponsibility, us looking bad, us feeling bad about it, us feeling like it wasn't. Can I tell you one little story?
Yes.
The Easter during COVID, God put in my heart to do a concert of original songs on my front porch on Easter Sunday morning. Well, okay, I've written many original songs, and so I could maybe do that. But we live on a cul-de-sac, and like nobody was going out anywhere. And I'm like, why? What is the purpose? What would I be doing? And he's like, it's a fundraiser. And I knew instantly in my heart which ministry it was a fundraiser for. And I'm like, really weird, but it wouldn't go away. And so I was like, okay. So I put it up, I set it up out there, and I let people know I was going to be doing this. And we have a surround driveway. And so I put this little offering thing out there, and they could drive by and put it over. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I reached out to the ministry leader in Africa, and I said, Pastor, God has put it in my heart to do a fundraiser for you guys on Easter Sunday. I have no idea how this is going to go. Might be $50, might be 500, might be 5,000. I don't know. Just pray that God will have his own way here. So gets to Easter Sunday morning, and it's pretty much a, just a bust. It's a kind of a disaster. The music, the quality isn't that great, and there's like nobody hardly coming by, and there was some upset about chairs on the driveway, and the police cars going by, like, what are you doing there? And it was like just like, oh, this was really uncomfortable, but did it, got to the end of it. And you know what, Althea? $5,000 came in. $5,000 came in. But what was crazy is the next day in my journal, I saved it, because the next day in my journal, I said, I am so upset about yesterday. And God's like, why? I'm like, well, because that was the stupidest thing. It didn't go well. The music wasn't good. Hardly anybody came. And he said, Marnie, did you do what I asked you to do? And I'm like, I did. So I don't understand. How come you didn't bless it? And he goes, did you raise the highest amount of money that was in your heart? And I'm like, we did, but it was terrible. And he goes, no, why are you really upset? And I said, well, I guess because I didn't feel like I earned it. And there it is.
Oh,
I didn't feel like the quality of the concert deserved $5,000.
wow.
This is like deep inside of us, guys. I would be more faithful if it didn't feel so like exposing me, like showing that I'm weak. Like it doesn't look a lot like I'm really fantastic. But the thing is that God always wants all the attention on him. And so he's driving us there all the time. And so when he asks you to do something, don't even spend any time at all considering how you're going to look.
Marnie, thank you so much for sharing that story. And there's just so much in it that we could unpack. But here's what I'm also hearing. God cares, we know, about results. But what the results he cares most about is our wholeness. And as Marnie said, he cares about the internal results and the eternal results. And so when we say yes to him, he does that with us in mind. And it's truly his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our ways. Like there's just so much that in your yes, not only were you able to fundraise for this ministry in Africa, but God exposed something in you so that you could be whole and that it can bless you in the future. And now you're blessing others, because I know I can feel that there are women right now who can relate to that, who may struggle with in terms of sales and pricing, that they don't feel like it measures up to their standard. And God is saying, I am well pleased because you created that offer, because you did what I told you to do, because you wrote that book. I am pleased because of that. Wow.
He's a good father.
He is a good father. Marnie, this is so good. And I already can tell there is links in the description, but tell us, those who, I know that you help women who are speakers, tell us where people can reach you and give us a little bit about your those speakers.
Yeah, sure. So my main hub is Marnie.com, just MARNIE.com. I'm old enough that I got my own name. How fun is that, right? Okay, so when you go over there, you'll find everything. And I just encourage you, I have a holiday planner that I encourage you to grab, because this is going to change how you do it at the holidays this year, but even every year going forward. Lots of strategies in there for really making the most and keeping the focus on Jesus during the holidays. And then there's a mentorship program there, a group coaching, as well as I have some one-on-one. And also you mentioned, I do have a site where I connect Christian women's ministry event planners. So like retreats, conferences, ladies' days out, things like that, with the Christian women speakers who come and speak for them. That's over at womenspeakers.com. If you do speaking, if you are a Jesus girl and you do speaking for groups, we would love to help promote you over there to the planners who are looking for speakers.
Oh, good. So you are, as guests of, not guests of Althea TV, my tongue is a little twisted today. So for viewers of Althea TV who love and know what I always say for the guests of after each guest of Althea TV. You know what's coming up. For those who are new, this is time for you to spend with Holy Spirit, intentional time. Marnie just shared really game-changing, life-changing, transformational strategies on time from God's perspective. And we want you to fully digest it, knowing that time spent with God is time well spent. So spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the Spirit is led to really write down, what did Marnie say that God wants me to digest and apply? God can do more in your life than you can do in a minute, right? Like, he's above time, he owns time, right? So give yourself that gift of time. And otherwise, hit that replay, because I know you're going to want to watch it again. And just thank you for being, Marnie, thank you for being a guest of Althea TV. And for those who, you've gotten so much out of this, they say sharing is caring, which I believe. So share this video, make sure to like and subscribe to Althea TV and be a part of the Althea TV family. Marnie, thank you again for being a guest. It's been a pleasure. And for everyone who's watching, I love you. Until next time, take care. God bless. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Then click the TV to watch the next video. Don't forget to visit my website at altheamcintyre.com to get your free training on the 7 biggest mistakes that keep Christian entrepreneurs from ever creating their $25,000 offer.